Kathleen Kennedy gave interviews.
Boo! I'm kidding. I'm kidding. We don't do that here.
We don't do that here.
As you know, as we've been accused of, Kathleen Kennedy personally signs all of the checks for all the non-existent money we make on this project.
Yep. So she went on the Dagobah Dispatch podcast.
Yep.
And was asked about Obi-Wan Kenobi, the show, and whether a second season would be possible. She said, quote, "I always hesitate to say, no, we won't do anything more with Obi-Wan Kenobi. Maybe what we end up doing is something that gets incorporated into some of the other stories we're doing, or eventually into a movie. Who knows? But right now, it's still our standalone limited series. We have no plans for expansion right now," unquote.
Yeah.
So, okay, this makes sense because
not a surprise. Yeah.
Like Obi-Wan, the series that we got was always planned as this sort of self-contained story, in large part because for the timeline to make sense, Obi-Wan has to stick around Tatooine for that stretch of time between episodes 3 and 4.
Yeah.
So, and there's only so much you can do telling a story with that, like in a universe that big with that limited a scale, it constrains what sort of stories you can tell.
Yeah. Originally, apparently the word is that Obi-Wan was going to be a 3-film thing. So a lot of people had, and like the season of Obi-Wan that we got was like a retooling of the first film. So I think people had some hope that maybe they were going to do some more, but we really don't need it. Like I don't think it's really, there's not a lot of story to tell there anyway. It's just an old grumpy man on Tatooine just trying to mind his own business. So in the same Kathleen Kennedy interview, she apparently said a ton of shit there. One of the like this part of her interview was about like the upcoming films and kind of like the direction of their, like what their headspace is about stuff, and talking as well about the upcoming Rey movie and stuff. And she said, well, as we move into the future space, which this story is about 15 years outside of Rise of Skywalker, meaning the Rey story. Obviously, we realize the post-war, post-First Order, rise of the new Jedi Order. We left Episode 9 with Rey making a commitment to Luke Skywalker that she would rebuild the Jedi Order, and so we are here. Which, by the way, I saw rumors about Hayden Christensen and Mark Hamill coming back as Force ghosts in this.
Not out of the question.
Yeah, and the source was just trust me, bro. Which is, take that with a grain of salt.
Yeah.
On the Star Wars shows, I thought this was pretty interesting. She said, there are so many things we can do in streaming now where we do massive effects. We really increase the scale and size of these stories. And I certainly find myself personally looking at, well, what is the distinction that movies something on the big screen versus the small screen? And on where to put certain ideas, she said it's usually the intimacy of the character-driven stories that you really try to push into the television space, and the spectacle that you can preserve in the movie space, because it's not at all like a secret that they've been really focusing on the Disney Plus side of Star Wars and like getting stuff out on streaming and stuff, because it's kind of where media is heading for the most part. Unless all of you streaming companies just like fail and then everyone's like, we just want cable back because this is bullshit. Why am I paying $90 a month on streaming services? And talking about James Mangold's Dawn of the Jedi, said, we've been talking a lot about going well into the past. And one of the things that's really knitting this all together, obviously, are the Jedi. What happened with the Jedi over time in their history, and how did the Jedi evolve? Which, like, I'm like, thank Christ, like, because I didn't need to know where Han Solo got his jacket, right? Like, I enjoyed Solo Star Wars stories; it was fine, but I would like Star Wars stories with Jedi in them because I am really interested in that mythos and like about the Force and like how did the Sith start? Like it was just two guys that got into an argument at school at the fucking Jedi school. And they had a bet, and the one guy was like, "Fuck you, I'm dropping out," or is it something else? Because it's like the whole thing is mystical, so you could have some epic shit that falls in line with like that 5,000 year stretch of mythology. Yeah, like it's really cool, and the fact that they haven't really gone into that officially with Disney, kind of like how they did with Knights of the Old Republic and stuff, is a little insane.
Well, a lot of what Disney has been doing has been built into this sort of like, I think 60-year box of the Skywalker saga,
because they know it'll sell. It's and it's not just a Disney thing. As we'll talk about a little bit later, there are plenty of things you can be pissed at Disney about that we find ourselves pissed at Disney about. It's just that like what everyone's screaming on social media are just dumb things that no one really cares about. Like the thing that you can always count on Hollywood is that they will give you 700 reboots of the same IP because they know that you'll pay to see it. It's the only there's no risk. Like they can just put it out and they'll know that like the core fan base will go and pay for it and they'll make a little bit of money on it.
That's why everything is sequels.
Yeah.
That Hollywood will produce what makes money and they're extremely risk averse.
Right. So like this idea of like a 60-year block, they're like, everyone will go to see a Han Solo movie.
Yeah, sure. I fucking love that guy.
But what about a movie with unknown characters that's set thousands of years before? Like,
yeah. So this is the thing. Number one, by stretching outside of that little box, Disney is expanding the universe in a very significant way. Number two, in particular, going farther down the line with Rey, I don't know if you've ever thought about it, but like the sequel trilogy actually covers a very small slice of the galaxy. Like just because it's so focused on that Resistance First Order conflict, like there's what planets do we actually see that aren't directly related to the war? Right.
Yeah. That's also kind of a George Lucas problem too, because it like.
To an extent, but like the prequels were pretty good about letting you see lots of different locales.
Yeah, that's true. I guess it never really mattered to George Lucas. Like the thing that mattered is let's have a different weird planet, right? And it's like, I guess they kind of did that in the sequels a little bit. Did they? Because so in Force Awakens you have like, Dakar, where the Resistance base was, and Takodana, where I know these planets because I play a lot of Battlefront and I played on those maps a whole bunch. Where Maz's castle is, Jakku, which is literally just Tatooine.
Yeah,
right.
For like 5 seconds, you see Hosnian Prime.
Yeah,
and then its last 5 seconds.
Right, and then like a third of Last Jedi happens on Octo. Which is kind of like the fact that they had like Skellig Michael and everything like that makes a really neat otherworldly location.
Yeah.
But the rest of that movie takes place on a ship, right?
Or the gambling planet.
Oh yeah, Canto Bight, and then
the part that you've blocked out of your memory.
Yeah. Which is funny because I've seen some arguments about that particular, because that's usually the part of Last Jedi I kind of fast forward through. But I've seen some thoughts on it where I'm like, okay, I get it. Like the developing, it doesn't matter.
It's an interesting locale with some interesting things to say that would have made a whole lot of sense and like been treated better if they had a fucking plan for the trilogy.
Yeah. And then what Rise of Skywalker had, well, Exegol was kind of neat.
Yeah,
like as a visual thing.
Well, it's not really the type of planet that people are just going to casually go to.
No, you know? I don't think that's allowed. I'm going to sit there like, no, I don't think you can come.
You're not allowed to either come or go.
Yeah. You pick one. You're in or out. And there, what was the Adrian Kloss, where the like the base is, and I mean, I guess maybe if you did if you compared. Maybe you'd find out that they were like around the same number of. How do we get? It doesn't. None of this matters.
It just feels like I guess to bring it back. I'm very happy that Disney is willing to go outside of the Skywalker saga and tell more stories about the bigger universe.
Yeah, and like unique stories, hopefully. And maybe ahead of time they can plan out like a 3-film storyline. George the Myth Lucas says hi.